All right, so this post is going absolutely nuclear on X, where it's gone over 7 million views in less than 24 hours. It's from the State Department, where basically Marco Rubio's team have just called out the entire UN for basically facilitating cultural and ethnic genocide of Western countries, of Europe, through mass migration. And the details that they go into here, I didn't even know some of this stuff. And this is super important that you understand this, because this could be steering the direction that the world is going into a better place. We could be healing from something, which we talk about a lot on the show. So let's read this thread, and then we're going to watch a video from Marco Rubio. So last week, the United States refused to participate in the UN's review of the Global Compact on Migration. The United States objects to the Global Compact on Migration and UN efforts to facilitate replacement migration. They used the word replacement migration to the United States and our Western allies, aka the UK, France, Germany, Spain, Norway. All of these European countries are absolutely falling to mass migration from Islamic countries. Marseille in France is already 30% Muslim. Paris is 15% Muslim. London's like 20% Muslim. Sweden is expected to be fully 30% Muslim in the next 20 years. This is the state all across the European Union. UN agencies, get this, systematically facilitated mass migration into America and Europe, even as citizens of these nations called for restrictions on migration. That's the thing. No one voted for this. UN agencies, working with the NGOs they fund, established a migration corridor through Central America to the US border. As the American people suffered under an unprecedented wave of mass migration, we have to remember what this means is all the sexual violence, the crimes, the narco trafficking, the stealing of jobs, undercutting labor and wages, real consequences, right? The UN was on the ground pipelining migrants into the southern border. This is remarkable that the Department of State is actually saying what is really going on. This is no longer a conspiracy, right? We've been calling this out for years, being called far-right conspiracy theorists, and now the State Department is talking about this. UN officials greeted migrants along the route through the deadly Darien Gap. UN-funded NGOs handed out maps to migrants en route to the US. After facilitating mass migration to the United States, UN agencies condemned the deportation of illegal migrants. It's as if the UN thinks that it controls the world, that it controls the United States, that it controls the borders, right? This is the UN who make out that they're all for democracy and power to the people, right? Whatever happened to that? The Americans didn't vote for this. Like, the UN are absolute tyrants. They don't give a care in the world about actual democracy, actual rights of citizens. Because the moment those citizens don't want anything that the UN is trying to force down your throat, they'll just go and find a way to do it for you anyway. Absolute tyrants that were never voted in. They're just super inflated cash payments that all these people are getting tax-free, huge wages when you work for the UN, right? All these privileges, diplomatic immunity. These people get away with the highest rates of sexual abuse of any organization on earth, right? The United Nations, in just a span of 10 years, their staff members committed at least 60,000 rapes. Those are just the ones they admit to, right? It's far higher than that. Like, more children are sexually abused at the hands of UN peacekeepers and staff members than like any other organization on earth. I've done a whole other video talking about this. You might want to check out my interview with a UN whistleblower. So, as Europe endured sustained migratory pressure, UN officials staffed all ends of the Mediterranean migration route, from the coast of Libya to the shores of the Aegean to the islands of Greece. The UN agencies, condemned frontline states who refused to open their borders, right? Human rights, human rights, human rights. Nonsense. While the United Kingdom faced unprecedented illegal boat crossings, UN agencies condemned plans for deportation. Unbelievable. And everyone still loves the UN and acts as if it's like the greatest organization on earth. UN officials lobbied aviation regulators to prevent the deportation of migrants. It would be a human rights abuse to send them back to the place where they've just come from. An appalling violation of the UK's national sovereignty. Absolutely. The Global Compact on Migration claims to support safe migration. For the citizens of Western nations, mass migration was never safe. It introduced new security threats, imposed financial strains, and undermined the cohesion of our societies. Exactly. Western cities now, all across Europe, are just a mosh pit for pro-Palestine agitators, for pro-Islamic regime agitators, for the kind of swarming of our streets by these Islamist grooming gangs who are after young meat, young white Western girls. Right? These nations are no longer safe. The stabbings, the arson attacks on churches, right? It's all being facilitated by the United Nations. It's no longer a conspiracy. It's out in the open now. All right. The United States will not legitimize global compacts that enable mass migration into America or Western nations. Under President Trump, the State Department will facilitate remigration, not replacement migration. So check out this video from Marco Rubio, because I think he hits the nail on the head. I've said this for a long time now, that I think Marco Rubio is the single greatest politician in the Western world. I hope he becomes president of the US one day. I really want him to be the next president of the United States. Marco Rubio has his head screwed on better than anyone else in Western politics at that level. All right, let's watch this.
Long been described as the Western Alliance, right? What is it? And it's not just me saying, you go to these NATO meetings and meet with people, what they will tell you is our shared history, our shared legacy, our shared values, our shared priorities. That's what they talk about as the reason for this alliance. Well, if you erase your shared history, your shared culture, your shared ideology, your shared priorities, your shared principles, then you just have a straight up defense agreement. That's all you have. So what I'm trying to point to, and what we've tried to point to, is very simple. That is, at the bedrock and at the cornerstone of our relationship, for example, with Europe, is the fact that we do have a shared culture, a shared civilization, a shared experience, and shared values and principles on things like human rights, on freedom, on liberty, on democracy, on all sorts of on the rights of the individual, on all these sorts of things that we in this nation are the inheritors of in many cases, because many of these ideas that led to the founding of our country found their genesis in some of these places in the Western Alliance. If you take that away, if that's wiped out because for whatever reason it's no longer a priority, I do think it puts a strain and threatens the alliance in the long term and in the big picture. Now, whatever internal politics causes people to dispute this, I'm not going to comment on, other than to tell you that I do think that at the core of these special relationships we have is the fact that we have shared history, shared values, shared civilizational principles that we should be unapologetic about. This is a nation that was founded on Western principles. Founded on Western principles like liberty, the value of and the right of the individual, the right of self-governance. These are all Western values. Now, others may have adopted it in different parts of the world, but they emanate from Western history. And it's something that we should be apologetic about. Why would we be apologetic about it? Anyone who doesn't recognize, for example, that many of the features of our system of government find their root in Roman and Greek history is a fool. Is a fool. It's just not true. And so I think that we need to understand and embrace that, not negate it. And I think that's what we're pointing to here, is that we are concerned that particularly in parts of Western Europe, those things that underpin our alliance and our tie to them could be under threat in the long term. And by the way, there are leaders in those countries that recognize that as well. Some say it openly, some say it privately. In the eastern and southern part of Europe, they're much more open about it. Nonetheless, it is a factor that needs to be addressed.
I love how unapologetic he is. Like, absolutely. Like, it's about time that Westerners stopped wringing their hands and just being so apologetic for who they are. Don't you understand that wherever the influence of this particular culture departs, all that floods in is barbarism. Barbarism, child grooming gangs, cousin marriage, inbreeding, terrorism, jihad, like things that don't work, trash everywhere in the rivers, on the streets, like the breakdown of society, tyrannical governments. Like, at what point did the West give up on itself, right, and start to be ashamed of itself? It's because of the infiltration of this radical leftist lunacy, which the United Nations has been completely captured by. So what the State Department has just put out may be one of the greatest turning points in Western history, in modern Western history, because it's saying that we're no longer going to go down this path that is leading us to self-destruction. Because what we need to remember here, right, is if Europe falls to Islamism or whatever it might be, it's going to be Islamism. You have Western European countries that have nuclear weapons, nuclear submarines, right? We have all the technology and the resources there, right? If that is taken over by Islamic governments who are supported by Islamic populations. You've just emboldened the Middle East because now that's part of their territory. And then if there is ever a war, America is dealing with China on one side and it's lost all of its European allies, and it weakens America as well. So we need to be thinking about this. We need to be thinking long term. We need to be thinking in terms of war. We need to be thinking in terms of these worst case scenarios. Because what we have is just these like Western liberal suicidal empathy like feminists who are so focused on their own little microaggressions and how they can like be more of an ally to some stupid cause, right? That they're actually self-destructing. They are self-destructing. And what's happening is the rest of the world is like, well, we'll just move in. Thankfully, Marco Rubio has his head screwed on tight. Thankfully, largely I've seen from the Trump administration a lot of good things. Not all great, but when it comes to Marco Rubio, I think this guy is brilliant. So anyway, I just thought that needed to be shared with you because this is a really important moment for the US, for the State Department to put this out. And actually calling it replacement migration shows as well that this is not a big conspiracy. The entire time people have been talking about this, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, there is no great replacement theory. No, like it's just happening. It just is happening. And it also has to do with like the falling birth rates and the abortions and just like the falling away from the church as well. People have lost their minds and tried to come up with their own rules for how to govern society. And all we've done is destroyed it in like one generation. So anyway, give this video a thumbs up, comment down below, hype it, subscribe to the show if you haven't already. And I'll speak to you in the next one. God bless.